Dear friends, welcome to our Luminous journey. This is second in the series, tips about meditation and some gleanings from the journey, the spiritual journey. Today I'm going to share some consolidated material that I've collected over the years from the various books and teachings of the Surat Shabd yoga masters who have been coming down to us from distant ages, and in this particular era by Kabir Sahib, who lived some 500 years ago. Kabir Sahib and Guru Nanak were contemporaries, and they both taught exactly the same teachings, but in different languages, one in Hindi, the other in Punjabi, and borrowed from many great Sufi Persian traditions. And wherever truth appeared, their teachings manifested in their writings and in their lives. These both were, Guru Nanak and Kabir were fully enlightened masters. That is, that they were not slaves of the lower self. They came as liberators, and there were masters before them and masters that came after them as well. Revelation is never sealed. And from their various scriptures and writings, I have put together a chart of the inner spiritual regions that the soul experiences as it goes into the inner journey. It's a meditation journey. And I'd like to quote from one of the Sikh scriptures. It says, upon hearing of the higher regions, even the worms aspire to reach them. So we're speaking about states of consciousness that actually cannot be described by words or by music or by sculpture, by poetry. These various art forms can only hint about the grandeur of the higher spiritual realms, and they are to be experienced. And to experience those higher realms, it requires the guidance of a competent adept or master, someone who has mastered these various regions. I had the good fortune of sitting at the feet of three great enlightened spiritual masters in my lifetime over the past 58 years. I came across the teachings of Hazur Baba Sawan Singh back in 1964, and Param Sant Kirpal Singh also in that same year. Later on, I got to travel with the master, Sant Kirpal Singh Ji Maharaj, in India. I spent 7 months with him, traveling throughout the subcontinent, and was daily spoon-fed, I would say, on the spiritual pearls that he was freely bestowing. And it was my good fortune then to come back to Canada and establish a business that was based on principles of service. That became quite successful over the years. I went back to India many, many times, and my journey also took me to meet the spiritual successors of Sant Kirpal Singh, gracious Master Sant Darshan Singh Ji, and the living Master Sant Rajendra Singh Ji Maharaj. And these masters taught the ancient spiritual practices and taught meditation and spirituality as a science, something that we practice in the laboratory of our body, and therein we can find access to these higher spiritual dimensions that are parallel and concurrent with our physical being. So I have picked up over the years many sources of inspiration that informed my chart One of them is a book called Sarbachan by Swamiji Maharaj. He was a master who lived in the 19th century, in the 1800s, and he was a great spiritual master who revived the ancient teachings. Um, there's another book by Lake Rajpuri called The Spiritual Path. The spiritual letters of Baba Jaimal Singh Ji Maharaj to his devoted and great disciple, Baba Sawan Singh Ji. There's another book, Mysticism, The Spiritual Path, which was written by Lake Rajpuri. And one of my favorite books, the Japji. This was a translation and commentary by Param Sant Kirpal Singh Ji Maharaj. And sometimes the saints speak of 4 regions, sometimes they speak of 5, sometimes of 8, and sometimes of even more. But the spiritual journey is something that begins when we rise above physical body consciousness, when we rise above the senses. And in the Japji, we have Guru Nanak speaks of 5 spiritual regions. And he speaks of the physical plane, he speaks of the astral plane, the causal, the supercausal, and the ultimate region, which is known as Sachkhand. These spiritual planes are also referred to by Maulana Rumi, who came about 200 years earlier than Guru Nanak. He appeared in Persia and in Turkey, what is today Turkey. He had his headquarters in Konya in Turkey. And he spoke of the 5 spiritual regions as the Panj Makam, or the 5 realms. So how to access these realms and how to get into these spiritual regions? This requires finding a master of this, but not just any master. It has to be a true master, because the saints in their writings have constantly said a Satguru. A guru is a spiritual teacher, but they speak of a Satguru. A Satguru is a teacher who is perfect in their moral behavior, does not exploit others, is a loving soul who comes to liberate others. And like a Buddha or a Christ-like figure who comes to dispense spiritual treasures without any hope of reward or recognition. They work hidden and unseen, and sometimes they reveal themselves, and they use the medium of spiritual discourses to reach their audience. They generally do not perform miracles, but to a disciple whose inner vision is opened, they may see miracles at every step. But a miracle seeker is not a truth seeker. We go to the saints not for miraculous manifestations, but to awaken the heart, the inner spiritual heart, and that is a true miracle when we awaken into the spiritual life. And we can see the hidden hand of the Lord working in all things. We first need to see it within ourselves and experience it within ourselves. And that journey begins when we learn to rise above body consciousness. Just as we need a teacher in all worldly affairs, if we want to become a skilled surgeon, we need to study with doctors and surgeons who have done these various procedures. And similarly, if we want to become a professor, we have to study with other teachers. If we want to learn carpentry, we need to study with carpenters. They will show us the ways that we will avoid a lot of mistakes on the journey. So, and it's even much more true on the spiritual journey, where we need some competent guide who has been to these various stages of the journey and who can transmit the experience of those higher regions in the body to ourselves. Okay. So as I said earlier, the spiritual world is running parallel and concurrent with our physical world and our physical body. So I'm going to show you a chart that I devised, and it's based on the teachings of the great saints who have come from times immemorial. So let us start with the physical body. So it is said that the physical body is the macrocosm in human form. Within the microcosm of the physical body, we have regions within this body, and they are various ganglionic centers that run along the spine. And in the yoga system, they refer to 7 chakras. But in the path of the masters, they refer to 6 centers in the body. The 7th center is actually only after one transcends the physical body. So these various centers are located at the lowest one is at the rectum, the next one is at the generative organ, and then the navel, then the heart, then the throat, and then finally, after meditation, one reaches what's known as the Ajna chakra, or the third eye. It's at the third eye center that we begin to experience the inner light. At the time of initiation by a competent master, that inner eye is opened, and rather than seeing darkness inside, we begin to experience this self-luminous light. It is the light of our being, the light of superconsciousness. And by regular practice on that, we begin to penetrate through the darkness. We begin to rise above the limitations of our body, our mind, and our emotions. As Sant Kirpal Singh Ji often said, feelings, emotions, and inferences are all subject to error. Seeing is above all. But seeing only rises when we can transcend physical consciousness, when we enter through this 10th gate, which lies dormant between and behind the eyebrows. Why is it called the 10th gate? Because there are 9 lower gates in the body. The 2 eyes, the 2 nostrils, the 2 ears, the mouth, and the generative organ and the rectum. Our attention from the time we've been born into this world has been leaking out through these 9 doors. So the saints give us a method of tapping inside and inverting our attention up to this point here, which is between and behind the 2 eyebrows. That's where the meditation journey begins. You might see statues of Krishna or Buddha with a eye here. That is referring to the latent eye that's within every single one of us. And every single spiritual tradition refers to a single eye or a third eye. In the Bible, in St. John, it says, "The light of the body is the eye. If therefore thine eye be single, thy whole body shall be filled with light." But we are that light, but our light has become identified with this body and the senses, and through those senses to the outside world, so much so that we have forgotten who and what we truly are. So the journey begins when our inner eye opens at the time of initiation. I had some experience of that inner light before I was initiated by Sant Kirpal Singh Ji, my master, but I didn't know how to go further. So once that we get established in the practice of Simran, which is the repetition of the divine names that are given to the disciple at the time of initiation, through the constant repetition, one begins to transcend body consciousness, and then the inner world begins to open. It starts as a sky, a blue sky normally, and in that sky there are little pinpoints of light or stars, We go further in there, we see a luminosity. Sometimes it's like a strobe light. Sometimes we see various colors. But if you keep penetrating through that, eventually that light will become steady like the sun. It will become steady like a full moon. Once our attention is fully centered in that, then the luminous form of our guru or master, if he's a competent master, right? Because there's always that caveat. It must be a competent and a true master, because a non-competent master cannot guide the soul further on the inner journey. And I'm not going to say who is and who isn't. That's not for me to tell. We have to have our own experience. So once we meet the luminous form of the master, then the soul can start to progress into higher and finer spiritual realms. And it's at this point that the sound current of the universe begins to manifest to the disciple. It is heard in the beginning like a sound from the distance. In the beginning, it kind of comes from the right side, and eventually it comes from the center, and it starts to draw the soul up into higher spiritual dimensions. To get, initiation is no small thing, and it's amazingly it's free. It's these teachings, they're free, and they always have been free. And if there's a price tag on spirituality, then it's not spirituality. Spirituality is like a gift of nature, like sun and air. And so far, no one has been able to charge a price for that. So spirituality too is something that does not have a price tag on it. It's not a business. And the saints and the masters who have come from time immemorial were people like us who had realized their full potential, had become self-realized, and ultimately became God-realized. And then they were given a commission to initiate others into that same practice and lead them Godward. And for that, they do not charge money. If you look at the lives of the saints, they all earned their living by some honest means. And they did not exploit their followers. And if someone does exploit their followers for sexual or monetary means, you better run from them, because they are not true guides. So, as I said before, I was very fortunate to sit at the feet of great masters. And one of the first books I read was a great saint, Baba Jemal Singh, written by Sant Kripal Singh. And in there, he referred to the inner spiritual experiences where Baba Jemal Singh went inside and it passed various stages. And then he was stopped at a certain stage, and it was through the grace of his master, Swamiji, Swami Shiv Dayal Singh, that he was able to go and complete the journey. So similarly, when my master went to his master, Baba Sawan Singh, and I've got a painting in the background here of Master Kripal. This painting is from a photograph that was taken of him in 1948 when he went to the upper Ganges at a place called Rishikesh. And above Rishikesh is further up the river is a place where there are rapids and large boulders in the stream. And here you can see the beloved master, after his master passed away on April 2nd, 1948, Master Kripal, under his orders, went into a silent retreat, a meditation retreat, for about 6 months. And he would sit on this rock in the middle of the river where he'd be not disturbed by anyone. And you can see he didn't pick a large rock and he didn't pick a smooth rock. He's sitting on a bare rock, and there's no cushion under him. On that rock he would sit 16 hours a day in deep samadhi. He was totally oblivious to the outside world and his body, and he would soar up into the higher spiritual regions. So above him I have a ethereal painting of his master, Baba Sawan Singh, who was always over his head. And truly, if we are awakened disciples, we will see and experience that our master is always over our heads, protecting us. As it is said in the Gurbani, Jaise sir upar tu Swami. Oh my Lord, you're always on my head. You're always over my head protecting me. He says, Jaise sir upar tu Swami, so dukha kaisa pave. So dukha kaisa pave, that when you are in that state, you are immune, you are protected from suffering and destruction. So we should have that innate faith that once we have some experience, our faith begins to develop. So it's not blind faith, because blind faith just assumes that you're being taken care of, but when you see that you're being taken care of, it's no longer a blind faith. It is a seeing faith, a living faith that nothing in this world can shake. It is implacable. So once we transcend physical consciousness, we cross the stars inside, and then we cross the moon and we cross the sun. On the other side, we meet the luminous form of the Guru. This is the true master. It is the Shabd Guru. It's in the form of light and the form of sound. Once Guru Nanak was asked, "Who is your Guru?" He said, "Shabad Guru Surat Dhun Chela." Shabad, or the primordial sound current, is the true Guru. And Surat Dhun Chela means, and my attention, Surat is attention, is the disciple. So the true Guru is the light and sound, and the disciple is the attention. So it's a matter of directing our attention. When our attention is fully focused, we only then can pass through the veil. And what's on the other side of the veil? So I've attempted to describe some of these things in this chart. Actually, on my website, arransart.org, I have this chart, and you can go and investigate it further. But once we transcend our physical body consciousness, we will come to the headquarters of the astral plane, and that is called the Sahansdal Kamal, or the Sahasrar, the 1,000-petaled lotus. That is like the brain of the causal plane. The causal plane is much vaster than our physical universe, and it's in that state, the headquarters of that is called Sahansdal Kamal, or the 1,000-petaled lotus. And from the 1,000-petaled lotus, there are 10 sound currents emanating. Various sounds, the chirping of birds, the ringing of bells, the rumbling of sea waves, and crickets, and bird songs, and things. All kinds of manner of tunes are coming from the 1,000-petaled lotus within. You know, it's interesting, often see the statues of the picture of the Buddha, and you see he has got a third eye here, and you see above, it curls with 1,000 curls on it, on his head. Those are only symbolic of the 1,000-petaled lotus, which is on the inner planes, on the astral plane. Just as we have a physical mind, we have a body, a brain that's in our physical body. The saints say we have actually 3 brains. We have the physical brain, we have the astral brain, and we have the causal brain. And beyond that is pure spirit. Pure spirit. So in the physical plane, we have this physical body to travel around in. On the astral plane, we have an astral body. It's just like our physical body, except it's made of finer etheric matter. And that body can travel around the astral plane with the speed of thought. And in that astral plane, which is very vast, bigger than this physical universe, the soul often gets lost there. So the only thing that can guide it through into the next stage is the light and the sound current. So the sound current there, the masters teach us that when we get initiated, that we should listen for the sound of the bell. The big bell as in a church, or the sound of the conch or shankh. So the big bell is the way up. So next, what's the next phase on that journey is a tunnel. There's a dark tunnel. And you may have read about near-death experiences where souls, they withdraw from the body and they see a dark tunnel and they pass through the tunnel. And at the end, when they come out of the dark tunnel, it's a curved tunnel, they come out of the end and they behold, sometimes they behold the founder of their religion, or they meet some old lost loved ones there. But that is just when people physically die. And those people who have physically died and come back to the body, and there are millions of cases of those people that they had out-of-body experiences, they describe going through that tunnel. So in meditation too, which is kind of like a mini death, we go through that curved tunnel, it's called the bunk null. When we come out on the other side, we meet the radiant form of the Guru. Now, ordinary souls stop here. But initiated souls who are initiated by a high master, a master who comes from the fifth plane, they are taken further on the journey. Now, this journey may take years, it may take lifetimes. It may take very short time at all, but it all depends on your receptivity, the grace of the master, and your own spiritual development in this life and also from previous lifetimes. So once we transcend physical consciousness and we go within, cross the stars, moon, and sun, and then we meet the radiant form, then the radiant form takes us further. He takes us through the bunk null. And I've tried to describe it here. You can't see it, but it's just kind of like a little tunnel there with a little radiant figure in the center. I don't know if you can see that, but it's pretty small. And so in the astral plane, there are lots of astral suns and stars and planets and gardens and all kinds of things. There are also astral hells where souls go there and pay out their bad karma. There is a place where we are rewarded for our good deeds, and there's a place where we are rewarded for our bad deeds. You could call them heavens and hells. But these are temporary places. These are all places of purification of our soul, because we've accumulated a lot of heavy weight in this world. Good deeds are, Lord Krishna said that good deeds are like golden chains, and bad deeds are like iron chains. But they both hold you down. You have to go beyond action, beyond good and bad. You have to go beyond good and evil to find the truth. So, beyond that, when we come out of the other side, we kind of step foot into the causal world, the causal plane. But we are walking there without feet. We are seeing there without physical eyes. We are hearing there without our physical ears. We are touching without physical hands. We are then operating with our causal body. So there the soul beholds great light, a great light that's all-knowing, and it's very blissful and peaceful. And when people experience it, they don't want to come back to the body. The predominant feature of the causal plane is a continuous rising red sun. It is a sun that bestows all knowledge up to that level. And that level, when the soul reaches that level of Trikuti, or the red rising sun, it hears the sounds of thunder and drums. These become very loud. Buddha talked about the lion roar of the Dharma. That is a reference to this stage of the journey. But there's many more. In that stage, there are 3 golden mountains, which are called Mer, Sumer, and Kailash. And there the soul beholds the beauty of these beautiful mountains that are radiant and golden. And so when the soul gets enough of that stage, then it's ready to move on to the next stage, which is then called the Daswan Dwar. It's the place which is called the pool of nectar. There is a vast sarovar, or lake, and in that lake there are steps that lead into it and lead out of it. And those steps, as the soul moves through that water, that it can hold it, but it is a place um, that is indescribable. It's full of nectar and intoxication and beauty. Um, it, the saints describe that in that stage there is a golden temple, a beautiful golden temple. And when the soul takes a bath in that inner Amritsar, it's called the Amritsar, it is washed clean of all of its, let's say, the dirt and the sins and the bad deeds and good deeds. They're all washed away in that nectar, in that tank of nectar, in that mansarovar, in that Amritsar. There the soul is purified, and only then is it allowed to progress further. At every stage of this journey, the radiant luminous form of the Master is there to guide the soul. And I think that that is enough of this journey today. And the next week we will discuss the next part of the journey. All I'm trying to do here is share with you what the Param Sants, or the great saints themselves, have shared with us. And I put together this chart gleaning from all the great sources, but that nothing ever beat talking with the masters personally about those realms and having them describe in great detail some of the features and the manifestations and the glories of those stages, which are really impossible to really describe in words. And with their grace, the grace that flows through these saints, one can actually have experience of them. If one is diligent, if one puts in the time for practice. It's not enough just to depend on the grace of some saint. You have to do what they say. If you don't, then that greater part of the spiritual journey remains closed. So when the initiate or the disciple begins to put the teachings of his or her guru into full practice, then the inner journey begins to open. It's not enough on this journey just to meditate for 15 minutes a day, or sometimes not at all. It takes daily, assiduous practice, living it. And if you do that, and if you adopt the ethical virtues in your life that are prescribed by the saints, and you meditate diligently, there's no way that the inner journey will not open. The trouble is, most people don't take the effort, don't make the effort to do what they need to do. So people say, well, how can I see the light? I can't seem to see the light. Well, are you sitting for 2.5 hours a day? Are you meditating regularly? Are you following what the Master says? Are you honest in your dealings? Are you kind to other people? Are you still getting angry? Are you still lustful? All of these things are impediments that cover the bright shining light of our soul. So next week I'll attempt to describe some of the stages that the soul goes through beyond this level, the region of darkness it has to pass through, this Stygian darkness that the soul has to cross, has to go through. And then the light of the soul, which is greater than 16 suns combined. We have no idea, we have no comprehension of really what lies within us. The guru, the master, the pir, the murshid of Maulana Rumi, his name was Shams Tabriz. He said, outwardly, you are only a handful of straw, but inwardly, you are more than 100 suns. So uncovering that luminosity, that brilliance that we all possess of our soul, that is the job of a master, and that is the job of the disciple. the disciple needs to do the spiritual practice in order to realize the fruits and benefits of it. So, I would love to invite you all to meditate for a few minutes with me, and then if you have some questions, I'll be happy to try to answer them to the best of my ability. So please, to begin this journey, we have to sit still physically. So just sit in any comfortable pose in which you can sit longer without moving anything. By not moving means you're not fidgeting, you're not shuffling your feet, you're not scratching your ear, you are sitting completely still. Not even raising your eyebrow, just everything is still. Your eyes are closed. Breathing will go on, let it go on naturally. Don't pay any attention to the breathing. With closed eyes, look minutely, penetratingly, lovingly into the middle of the darkness lying opposite to your eyebrows. That which sees the dark veil is not the physical eyes. It is the inner eye that sees that dark veil. So with that inner eye, look with full concentration right into the middle of it, say about a foot in front of you, although that cannot be measured. Just look into the middle. Let your body be fully relaxed. Let there be no tension in any part of your head or your eyes. Next is silent repetition. That is repeating the mantra that the Master has given you. And if you are not initiated, you can repeat any name of the divine which you hold sacred. It could be of some saint, it could be of some aspect of God, it could be a quality like love or light. But repeat that name single-mindedly to prevent thinking of worldly things. And every time a worldly thought intervenes, repeat that name. Initiates should repeat mentally, not out loud, the 5 charged names, which are the passwords to each of the 5 spiritual regions. Become absorbed in the name, in repeating the name. Forgetting yourself, forgetting your body. And as you look within, try to be acutely aware of what you see inside, without straining, without any effort on your part. Master Kripal used to say, let yours be an effortless effort. Sometimes our effort stands in the way. Effortless effort. And after some time, a loving soul begins to see before him or her a lightening in the dark veil. It begins to become lighter. Our body becomes lighter and ceases to exist. Time itself begins to stand still. Do your repetition. Looking within. After some time, a soft luminescence begins to appear. As we come closer and closer to our higher consciousness, we begin to experience kind of a giddy joy, a lightness, a burden is removed. Don't let your effort stand in the way. Get out of the way. And just be. And you will begin to see that soft luminosity increasing in intensity. It becomes an inviting door for you to step through. It is said that the nature of the soul is Sat Chit Anand. Truth, consciousness, and bliss. The reason why sitting for 5, 10 minutes or 15 minutes doesn't cut it is that it takes time for the mind to become subdued. It takes time for it to calm down. When it's an exciting ball of energy, it's just exuding thoughts every second. And everybody says, oh, when I meditate, my mind is running here, there, and everywhere. Well, you have to make a resolute vow put your foot on the mind and increase the time for meditation, and then you'll begin to go further. Master Kripal used to say, there's no high road to concentration except to concentrate, concentrate, and still more concentrate. Now, Lucas, do we have any questions? No questions? I remember all right, no questions. I remember Master used to say something like, sometimes when he'd ask, are there any questions? And there'd be no questions. And he said, when the pitcher of milk is full, it doesn't make any noise. I think there is a question there. Vaishali Soni, 2 questions. One, is numbness in body a good sign? Yes, it's a good sign. When we learn to withdraw our attention up to the third eye, what happens is the same process as what happens at the time of death. The attention begins to vacate from the extremities of the body. It first withdraws from the tips of the fingers, the tips of your toes. It withdraws from your hands and your feet, and eventually the withdrawal process comes up, and then when it reaches here at the eye focus, at the eye center, the third eye, the single eye, then the whole body becomes numb. Breathing process slows down substantially. The heartbeat slows down. All the bodily functions come at rest. That's why you often find meditators often live a long life, because it is said that our lifespan is determined by how many breaths, not just how many days we have, but how many breaths we have in our life. So by slowing down our breathing and everything, our physical body, unless it's karmic, will live a longer life and a healthier life. So numbness is not a bad thing. No, it's a good thing. But don't pay attention to the numbness. Try to keep your attention up here. The second one, sometimes good and positive thoughts keep coming. How to manage? It's good to have positive thoughts, not negative ones. So once Master Kripal asked his master, Baba Sawan Singh, is it all right for the disciple, once he's withdrawn up to the eye focus, to think of his master? And Baba Sawan Singh replied, yes, it's good. It's good to think of your master. You know, normally we're thinking of everything else in this world. So when you think of your master, you start to imbibe his qualities. As it is said, as you think, so you become. Okay, another person asks, Sukhkar, when we listen to sound, what actually should we do? That's a good question. Okay, so meditation has 2 parts. The first is light, which involves doing Simran and fixing your gaze inside. Simran, which means repetition. Dhyan, which means focusing the gaze at one point. Okay, so usually Simran and Dhyan are considered as one practice. So bhajan is not the singing of hymns. In Sant Mat terms, bhajan means to attune to the inner sound current, the sound that permeates all the universes. It's called the Shabad Guru. Okay, so in meditation, when we focus on the sound, it's important that we listen to the sound that's coming from the right side. There are many sound currents that come from above, all right? So sound can be heard from the right side or from the left side of the head. According to the masters, the sounds from the left side are from the negative power, and the sound you hear from the right side is from the positive power. Remember, this body is a microcosm of God, right? God's light is inside us, God's music is inside us. So we attune within to the sound. We listen to it coming from the right side. And try to listen, try to pick out of the inner sounds, try to pick out the sound of the bell or ringing, right? It's not tinnitus. We're talking about a spiritual sound that created all the universe, which in the beginning, it's very dim. It might sound like crickets, and it might sound like a train rumbling along. It might be chirping of sounds of birds and crashing of waves and things like that. Or you might seem like the beating of a heart. But the thing is to try to catch the sound of bell. And that sound, it sounds like it's coming from the distance. But the masters say, they tell you right at initiation, don't follow the sound out to the right side. Keep your attention fixed at the third eye and listen here. And that sound will come from the right side. It'll come closer and closer. And ultimately, it will come from the middle of your head and then from above. And that sound will pull your soul up faster than the light. Sometimes the light holds us down, but the sound pulls us up. Sound is the way. The inner music of creation is calling us back to its source. I don't know if that answers your question. You kind of got me going there. So that's what we should do. We close our ears off from outside and we listen to the sound from the right. And it will become finer and finer the more we listen to it, and then it will become more musical and it will drag us up. When I meditation, another one, I get answers to my life problems and feel tempted to get up and do what comes through, or at least make a note of it. How to make myself continue in meditation when I'm so excited at having received a solution to a life issue. Well, make sure you're not listening to your mind. Mind can speak to us in meditation, and then there's also a time when the master can speak to us in meditation. So what we are told to do, those who are initiated, that when you are initiated, you should repeat the 5 names to test the veracity of your experience, to test the genuineness of your experience, because sometimes the negative power appears inside. We have both positive and negative powers within us. The mind is an agent of Kal, or the negative power, whereas the soul is a drop of Satnam. The soul is a drop of the Supreme Being. And the soul and mind are in a kind of a conflict. So we need to convince the mind to do what is right. Make the mind your friend. Befriend the mind, Master Kaval used to say. Befriend the mind, and then you can get it to work for you. Just like fire. He said fire is a very good servant because it heats your food, heats your home, and all that stuff. But it also can burn your house down. So fire is a good servant, but a terrible master. So the mind is a good servant, but a terrible master. Let the soul be your master. Let the soul be your master and be the master of your mind. And for that, we need to make the soul strong. And meditation makes our soul strong. Meditation gives us an uplift so that we can take spiritual journeys into the beyond and be with our beloved. How to stay in this world and still not belong here. Sometimes we know intermingling with surroundings will take us away from the path, but how to reduce that without annoying or hurting people, because they're also God's creatures? Very good question. Master Kapal told me, he says, you should be like a duck. You should be like a duck that it swims in water, it floats on water, And when it wants to fly away, it flies away and its wings are dry. So you should be like the duck or the swan that floats on the water of life and can take off. And I know that question about, how do you treat others, with respect and not hurt their feelings, because God does dwell in everyone. God dwells in he says, be careful. We're kind of like in a minefield of hearts, walking through life. We're walking through a minefield, but instead of bombs, they are hearts. And if we step on one, and we can hurt them, and we can hurt ourselves by hurting them, the more we help others, the more we help ourselves. The more we give, the more we donate, the more we're helping ourselves. So this is a principle that the more you give, the more you receive. This is true in all aspects of life. So to not hurt people's feelings, you still have to do your practice. And somebody said, well, I can't meditate because I don't want to offend my wife, or I don't want to offend my husband. Well, that's a silly excuse. You, by doing your spiritual practice, you not only will bless yourself, but you will bless your spouse. You will bless your mother, father, your children. And if you progress spiritually, it is said that you will be a blessing for 7 generations. If you do your spiritual practice, you will help those who were born before you in your family. You will benefit those afterwards. So first and foremost, we should get our priorities straight, that to do our spiritual practice, it will make our life. It is the foundation upon which all else stands. Sometimes it means you may have to sacrifice going to a movie or, whatever, watching late night stuff. Instead, you say, okay, I got to go to bed early because I have to get up early and do my meditation. Because out of 24 hours, you only need maybe 6 hours sleep, maybe 7 hours sleep. You don't need 24 hours to sleep. You don't need 24 hours to work. Your work may take 8, 10 hours a day, maybe 12 hours if you're a workaholic. And you sleep, 6 hours? You still got lots of time left over. Well, I got to eat, okay? Take off a couple of hours for eating. I got to socialize, okay? Take off another. You still have 2 hours. You still have 2 to 3 hours left over. And that time is best spent in meditation. And the best time to meditate is early in the morning while it's quiet. Even after a lot of effort, I'm still not able to continue a routine of meditation. What to do? Somebody said that to Master once. Master Kirpal was really strict. He said, there's a cure for not seeing, but there's no cure for not sitting. You have to make the effort, brother. If you don't make the effort, how do you think your cup is going to get filled? Grace is there, but you've got to unfurl your sails to catch the wind, to carry your boat across to the other shore. And I think that's enough questions for now. Save them some for next week. Let's just end now on that note of sailing across the sea of life. And I would like to end with just a beautiful bhajan by some saint. I don't know who wrote it. It's called Guru Dev Meri Neya. Oh, my beloved Guru, my beloved Master, carry my boat to the other shore. Up till now you have protected me. In future also please protect me. In my worldly worries and cares I may forget you, but oh Master, please don't forget me. And if these words be true, let it show forth in the deeds and actions of my life. Guru Dev Meri Neya उस पार लगा देना अब तक तो निभाया है आगे भी निभा देना गुरुदेव मेरी नैया उस पार लगा देना अब तक तो निभाया है आगे भी निभा देना मुमकिन है जंज तो मैं तुमको भूल जाओ परनाथ कहीं तुम भी मुझको न भुला देना। गुरुदेव मेरी नैया उस पार लगा देना। अब तक तुम निभाया है, आगे भी निभा देना। तुम इष्ट मैं हम सेवक, तुम देव मैं पुजारी। यही बात अगर सच है, सच करके दिखा देना। गुरुदेव मेरी नैया उस पार लगा देना। अब तक तू निभाया है, आगे भी निभा देना. Thank you all. God bless. Master bless.